I'm Blair with Revit Auto. If you have a fleet in the DMV area and you wish that you had access to on-site fleet services and want to partner with a real mechanic team, be sure to give us a call, shoot us an email. Today we're working on a FUSO FE180, which is one of your Mitsubishi Canter cab-over trucks. And what we're doing is a diagnostic for a low power concern and potentially fluid leaking everywhere. So the first thing that I always like to do is hook up my scan tool, check for any codes that there may be, as well as check all the fluids so that I have a very solid understanding of the foundation of the truck that we're working on. If you've ever wondered what it looks like to have a mobile mechanic come on site and service your fleet, this is a great video for you to watch. And today behind me, we have an FE180 FUSO from All Stage and Sound, one of our premier customers. And what does it mean to be a premier customer? It means that you become a partner with Revit and we fully integrate it in with your business. So they called us this morning and we've shown up this afternoon to figure out what's going on with their truck here. And we're gonna go ahead and document that for you so you understand what the repair process looks like from the initial phone call to the diagnostic and the resolution. To diagnose your vehicles, we have a bunch of different scan tools. We have OEM software as well as aftermarket. And for your FUSO, it's really good when you have your OEM, but the FUSO software is very hard to get. So our least favorite vehicle to work on is certainly the FUSO, but we will still do it. So what we're gonna do here is let this thing go through a full engine scan and look for any possible codes that would point us in the direction of why we have a low power concern. While that's also occurring, I'm gonna leave my driver's side door open and I'm going to release the cab to make it as easy as possible for me to tilt this thing forward. So I'm gonna go to the other side and do that now. So what I like to do is I like to open both doors, make sure that there's nothing that can easily be broken on the back side of the window or nothing heavy that's gonna smack the windshield. And then you'll come over and you will go ahead and pull your safety latch here, lift this forward, pull this up and tilt the cab forward. Now on our right-hand side, we're gonna have our little safety latch switch here, and there's supposed to be a safety pin that holds this in that can prevent it from coming back on us, but I don't see that currently. So my next step in the diagnostic process is to figure out where we're leaking fluids from and check all the fluids so we can make sure that everything is full and good. Sometimes it can be as simple as a fluid leak, and we address the fluid leak and we fill it up with the proper fluids or oils and everything works perfectly fine. All right, so the first thing that I'll do is just give it a general once over to see what is going on. And as you can see here, we have some splatter marks, which means that we probably have a leak somewhere. So we have a ton of oil buildup and we even have some engine oil that's made its way onto the belt. So I'm gonna just document this and take a picture of it. And that's probably what has been flinging all of this oil around here. It's just the way that it was hitting the fan. And by the looks of it, there may be an issue coming up here on either this timing cover, but we're probably gonna have to clean everything up with our steam pressure washer to further diag. I can also see here that I have a valve cover leak going on as well, but that's not what is causing our low power concern. We have something else afoot. So this is my power steering fluid reservoir, and this is my coolant reservoir. So I'm just gonna go ahead and check and make sure that my coolant level is good and that there's no intermix of fluid, which there does not appear to be intermix, which is a great first sign. I'll go ahead here and check my transmission. Now my transmission is supposed to be checked while the engine is driving. While I have the opportunity to check it, I'm just gonna see if the level is on the dipstick. And I said I check it while it's driving. What I meant to say is I check it while it's running. So right now it is registering on the dipstick. So I can just do a little bit of a dab here. And my trans fluid looks really nice and clean. And because it was registering on the dipstick, that's a good sign. When we start the engine to recheck the transmission fluid, that'll give us an accurate reading to see if that is part of the problem that is leaking. All right, the next thing is for us to check the oil level. So we'll go ahead and wipe this dipstick clean. And we'll go ahead and reinstall it and pull it back out and take a look. And we are low on engine oil. So if you're looking at our engine oil here, this is the low, this is the full, and we are below. Now we are on just the tiniest bit of an incline on a hill, but the fact that we are looking at the engine oil level on the dipstick means that we have engine oil. So I'm just gonna go ahead and document this for our inspection report, which each service that we do for a customer comes with a digital inspection report. All right, so now that we know that the engine oil is low and that we have a couple of codes related to the check engine light being in the history, that code being that we have a high P1121, which is the throttle position sensor circuit. And what that typically means is that the throttle position sensor itself is starting to go faulty. Of course, we'll have to check all of the wiring components first and just do a pinout test. And that'll tell us if we're getting proper signal from the ECM and to the ECM, as well as making sure that our throttle body position sensor is working correctly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pour the oil. Now when I pour oil and I do not have a funnel, what I do is I pour the oil this way. And what that does is that gives me the opportunity to get as low as possible without spilling. Now in these bigger diesels, whenever you see that you have a mark on the bottom and a mark on the top, that's typically referring to about a gallon. So we're going to go ahead and put this 4 quarts, 1 gallon of 15W40 inside, and then we're going to check the level. Now remember, this thing's parked at a little bit of an incline, so it's going to read slightly higher than what is actually inside of the oil pan. And that's just because the pickup tube is at the back of the motor, and we are on an incline where the rear is lower and the front is higher. So now I can go ahead and pull my dipstick, and we can see here that we are just a little bit over, right? Which means that we're probably right at the full mark that I need to be at. So now we've added this gallon. I feel confident and comfortable to start the engine and start looking for that leak that is all over the side, the front, and the bottom of this engine. So we found 2 issues right now with this vehicle that would cause that low power concern. The first issue that we found is that this intercooler boot here on the cool side of the intercooler, the clamp has fatigued and fallen off. And that's going to be leaking valuable boost pressure while you're trying to achieve more power with a heavy load inside the vehicle. The second thing that we found is that the adapter that bolts onto the block for the oil filter housing is also leaking. It's also right at that point where the turbo drain line goes to, and that is also a leak. So we're going to fix those 2 leaks. We're going to repair this, and the code here for this, P1121, is a stored code in the history, which means that it's not an active code, which means that it's intermittently failing. So we're going to make sure that we get a wiring diagram to do some further diagnostics, as well as a pinout test, so we can make sure that we have everything properly diagnosed before we just start throwing parts at something. So the next step here is to fix those 2 issues and see if the customer concern is still there. So you can see here that we have quite a bit of buildup, and you can also see that there's looking like something that's like fanning out this, right? And what that is if I peel back this small little piece of foam, you can actually see the clamp that is supposed to secure the intercooler boot onto the cold side of the intercooler. And you can see here that it's so loose I can actually just twist it around and manipulate it. So what we're going to do is put this back into position and snug this guy up so that we don't lose any of that valuable boost. You can also see that we're probably having some turbo failure, as there's quite a bit of oil buildup inside of these intercooler ducts here, and that's typically indicative of a turbo starting to fail. What we see here is that at the top of the oil filter housing, there's quite a bit of oil that has built up. And you can also see, if you look a little bit further up into the motor compartment, you can see where the turbo drain line also meets that place. And both of those are leaking. And then if you look down a little bit lower, as we zoom out here, we can see that the leaf springs on the passenger side are just completely coated with engine oil. And all of this oil is just coming from that leaking under pressure and that leaking when everything gets hot, and then just spraying out everywhere. So once we've diagnosed the primary concern of the customer complaint, we also just do a full walk around of the vehicle, documenting the tires, the brakes, and making sure that there's nothing that we're missing that's going to create a problem or a breakdown later down the road. Remember, the most important thing is to reduce downtime, and the most expensive thing is to have a breakdown on the job site, because then you have labor, lack of being able to get the job done, and all the other associated expenses with having to tow the vehicle, as well as find a replacement or a rental. So as I'm looking at the tires, the things that I'm really looking for is I want to make sure that there's no outside wheel damage, because on the passenger side of a vehicle, that's your most likely side that's going to have a lot of curb damage. The next thing that I want to look for is on the inside of the wheels here to see if there's any buildup of grease or material, because that's indicative that we have an inner hub seal failure or a wheel seal failure. And as I see here, I've got quite a bit of buildup of oil on the inside of this wheel. And that tells me that there's probably a wheel seal failure going on this inner rear hub. Another thing that we'll do is we'll take a picture of all four corners of the truck, and if there's any physical damage that we notice, we'll document that. We then go back through our database to make sure that we've captured all of the customer concerns, as well as any new damage that hasn't originally been accounted for. As you can see here, this truck actually has two tires that are a totally different tread on the other side of the driver's side, and then two different types on the passenger side. So what we're seeing here is that we have mismatched rear wheels, and you always want to make sure that you have the same style tires on the axle. So we'll go ahead and we'll recommend that these get replaced. We also found a small finishing nail in there. So that's either going to be a plug or a patch. And there's also some dry rotting and some cracking on these tires, which means these tires are also pretty old. So depending upon how much repair work is going to be required for this vehicle, it may not make sense to continue to invest in the vehicle for repair. It may be time to look at replacing this. All right, so now we have that intercooler boot nice and tight, and we've topped off the fluids. We can go ahead and either bring this vehicle back to our home location, our HQ in Damascus, Maryland, pressure wash everything, clean it up, figure out where all the leaks are coming from, as well as let the client know what type of work they're going to be expecting out of this to see if this is something that they're ready to retire or if they want to make the investment to keep the vehicle in operation. Like, comment, subscribe. If there's any type of content you want to see, we are here to serve you. Happy motoring, and as always, make it a great day.